For 60 years, Singapore built one of the most remarkable development stories in modern history. A tiny island with no natural resources, surrounded by larger neighbors, transformed itself into a global financial hub, a logistics powerhouse, and a model of multiracial governance. That success was not accidental. It was built on a specific set of conditions that Senior Minister Lee Hsien Loong is now warning may no longer hold. Speaking to Singapore's top civil servants at the annual Administrative Service Dinner, Lee delivered what amounts to a frank strategic warning. The rules-based international order that underpinned Singapore's rise, anchored for decades by American power and multilateral institutions, is fracturing. Major powers are no longer championing open trade and cooperative norms. They are weaponizing their dominance in critical industries, rare materials, and technology supply chains to extract leverage and hobble rivals. Security spending is crowding out investment and growth. War and conflict, Lee said plainly, are now more likely. This is not hyperbole. It is a sober reading of a structural shift that has been building for years. The liberal international order that emerged after 1945, codified through the UN, the WTO, and a web of bilateral alliances, was always imperfect. But it provided a framework within which small states could trade, attract investment, and pursue development without becoming pawns in great power competition. That framework is now under severe stress from multiple directions simultaneously. For Singapore specifically, the implications are acute. Singapore's entire strategic model depends on being useful to everyone, a neutral node in global trade, finance, and diplomacy. When the world fragments into competing blocks, that neutrality becomes harder to maintain. Every supply chain decoupling, every sanctions regime, every industrial policy designed to exclude rivals, forces Singapore to make choices it has historically avoided. And the cost of getting those choices wrong, for an island of less than 6 million people with no strategic depth, is enormous. But Lee's remarks go beyond geopolitics. They are also a diagnosis of something happening inside democracies, including wealthy, established ones. When governments fail to deliver results, public trust erodes. Populist leaders exploit that frustration, offering simple answers to complex problems, and the cycle of institutional decay accelerates. Lee is explicit. This has happened in countries once regarded as models of democratic governance. Singapore, he argues, must never allow itself to reach that point. This is where the speech carries its sharpest edge for the region. ASEAN as a whole faces a version of this same challenge. Several member states are navigating governance crises, institutional erosion, or democratic backsliding. The external environment, US-China rivalry, supply chain restructuring, climate stress, food and energy insecurity, is placing enormous pressure on governments across Southeast Asia. Those that cannot deliver economic results risk the same populist backlash Lee describes. What Lee is calling for inside Singapore is essentially a civil service that can adapt without losing its analytical rigor, one that questions existing policies without abandoning the discipline of evidence and long-term thinking. That is a high bar, but it reflects a genuine insight. In a more turbulent world, the quality of a state's institutions matters more, not less. For small states watching from across the region, the message is uncomfortable but important. The conditions that made fast development possible in the late 20th century cannot be assumed going forward. The next generation of leaders, in Singapore, in Vietnam, in Indonesia, across ASEAN, will have to build resilience, not by copying old models, but by developing institutions capable of navigating a world without reliable rules. That is a H.